Hare Krishna. Okay, look out, we're being recorded. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Mati Bhakti Vedanta Swanti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nivasi Jai Sri Krishna
Chaitanya Nanda Priya Dvaita Gadadha Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktavinda
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna Hare
Hare Ram.
Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
So I don't know if you remember, but last week we left some homework for you. Anyone can remember what that homework was? I only remembered myself because I looked at the purple and I saw, okay, yeah, I left that as a question. Remember, there's different manifestations of Krishna as Krishna's energy manifests within the world. And Prabhupada, in a really fascinating purple, to text 5, he listed those 5 different types of consciousness. Does anyone remember what one of those was?
Yes. Not remember. I look at the
Oh, yeah.
Bhagavad Gita. There's Annamaya, Pranamaya, Jnanamaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya.
Okay, you can give us a little synopsis of what Annamaya is?
Annamaya is on the gross level, gross body.
Yeah. Generally characterized by just the understanding I need to eat.
Yes.
Yes.
Then
So,
Pranamaya is understand that I am a spirit soul, or
yeah,
I'm different from the gross body.
no, that comes later. Pranamaya means you start to appreciate life, that other people exist, rather than just concerned about feeding yourself. You begin to become conscious that there is other human beings around. That's Pranamaya. And the next one is
Vijnanamaya, and then
Jnanamaya.
Vijnanamaya.
Yeah. What's it saying Bhagavad Gita there, Mother? You have it there? Jnanamaya?
Yes.
Inquiry, isn't it? Philosophical inquiry. Is that right? Go on.
Then in Pranamaya, after realizing the supreme absolute truth in food, one can realize supreme absolute truth in the living symptoms or life forms.
Jnanamaya. That's the next one.
You say. In the Jnanamaya, realization extends beyond the living symptoms to the point of thinking, willing, feeling.
Yeah.
And then there is a Brahma. There's the next one then.
Yeah, that's one you mentioned.
Jnana.
Jnana. Yeah.
Yeah.
To understand the difference between soul and matter.
Yeah. That's
And then-
Vijnanamaya, yes.
Yeah. And then finally we have,
Anandamaya.
which is,
The next and the supreme stage is Anandamaya realization of all blissful nature. That's
Krishna
all there is.
consciousness. Haribol. Krishna consciousness. Anandamaya, being conscious of Krishna.
Prabhu, where is this? Because it's
Chapter 13, I think.
chapter, yes, and
Text 5.
That's 5.
text 5. Okay, yeah, lovely.
It's towards the end.
Yeah. So that was last week. So now you can recall it now that we mention it. But it's good to try and remember that. But let's share the Bhagavad Gita then, continuing. You can see Bhagavad Gita? Did it share?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, just 1 second. Let's see if anyone else wants to come in. Okay. Okay, so we have 2 texts together. Let's chant before I begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, would someone like to lead us to begin with? You can have a go at the Sanskrit.
Shall I try?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll do very well.
Mahabhutanyahankaro buddhirvyaktavyameva cha indriyani dashayikam cha panchachendriya gochara ichha dvesha sukham dukkham sanghastas chetanas dhruti etat kshetram samasena savikaram udarhutam.
Very nice pronunciation. Hare Krishna. Yes. Oh.
Translation: the 5 elements, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms, and convictions, all these are considered, in summary, to be the field of activities and its interactions.
So I just asked a question here. What's the field of activities? We discussed it last week.
Body,
Yeah.
our body?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, our body, which we have received according to our karma. So this is the field by which we interact with the world. Yeah, as it's described here. Yes. Okay, you can read the purple. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. From all the authoritative statements of the great sages, the Vedic hymns and aphorisms of Vedanta Sutra, the components of this world can be understood as follows. First, there are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These are the 5 great elements, Mahabhut. Then there are false ego, intelligence, and unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of nature. Then there are 5 senses for acquiring knowledge, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Then 5 working senses, voice, legs, hands, anus, and genitals. Then above the senses, there is the mind, which is within, and which can be called the sense within. Therefore, including the mind, there are 11 senses altogether. Then there are 5 objects of senses: smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. Now, the aggregate of these 24 elements is called the field of activity. If one makes an analytical study of these 24 subjects, then he can very well understand the field of activity. Then there are desire, hatred, happiness, and distress, which are interactions, representations of the 5 great elements in the gross body. The living symptoms represented by the consciousness and conviction are the manifestations of the subtle body, mind, ego, and intelligence. These subtle elements are included within the field of activities. The 5 great elements are a gross representation of the false ego, which in turn represents the primal stage of false ego, technically called the materialistic conception of tamasa buddhi, intelligence in ignorance. This further represents the unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of material nature. The unmanifested modes of material nature are called pradhan. One who desires to know the 24 elements in detail, along with their interactions, should study the philosophy in more detail. In Bhagavad Gita, a summary only is given. The body of the representation of all these factors, and there are changes of the body, which are 6 in number. The body is born, it grows, it stays, it produces byproducts, then it begins to decay, and at last stage it vanishes. Therefore, the field is a non-permanent material thing. However, the kshetragna, the knower of the field, its proprietor is different.
Okay, thank you. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot that we are entangled in. Ultimately, the soul is above this. The soul is transcendental to everything that's being described here. But we, as has been described before, we misidentify with this field. Yeah, but we are the knower of it, so we are the observer of it. So this is also known as, it said here, this is what is being described here. Prabhupada says, one who desires to know these 24 elements in detail along with the interactions, should study the philosophy in more detail. So if you're intrigued by this and want to find out more, you can find it in the teachings of Lord Kapila, 3rd canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. It goes into quite some detail. Shankhya, it's called this, the analytical study, Shankhya. Yeah, so you can read about it more. But you'll need a notebook, and you need to take notes as you go along to keep track of what's being explained. All right. So any immediate other questions or comments here? This part. Let's just go. Now I just want to go back and read the verse, text 5. That knowledge of the field of activities and the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in Vedanta Sutta, all reasoning as to cause and effect. Okay, so now we're hearing. Yeah? So the 5 great elements: false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, and described in the purple. There are false ego, intelligence, and the unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of material nature. That's called pradhan. You may read this word, you may have heard of this word, pradhan. So before the elements are manifest through the agent of time, they are in a state of called pradhan. So that's what that means. Sometimes it might be difficult to understand what that means, but as far as I understand it, this is pradhan.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
What is the difference between pradhan, where Mahavishnu looks and agitates the nature, and the other one opposite to pradhan is
Prakriti.
Mahat Tattva.
Huh?
So what is Mahat Tattva? So what is the difference between Mahat Tattva and pradhan?
Good question. The answer doesn't come immediately to mind.
Okay.
Anyone can help? The difference between Mahat Tattva and pradhan. So that's some homework for me.
Well, it's somewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's very difficult to.
I think pradhan is the total material energy,
Yeah.
and then it's just broken down into divisions, like what you say, Mahabhuta, is just the name of the 5 elements, but pradhan is the sum total of everything in the material energy.
And that is agitated by Mahavishnu when he wants to start creating the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pradhan, and then each of the elements come into along with the senses.
So Mahat Tattva, it said
Mahabhut, what was it?
Mahabhuta.
Something
Mahat
Bhuta?
Tattva.
Yeah, the Mahat Tattva. So everything, well, Tattva, the truth, I guess. Great. So everything is manifesting from Mahat Tattva. What's coming to mind now? Yeah, thank you, Mother Lavanga. It's just reminding me that, as far as I understand, everything is manifesting from that ultimate absolute truth coming from Mahavishnu, Mahat Tattva manifestation. And including in that is the manifestation of pradhan. Then the pradhan is agitated by the glance and then manifests as the modes of material nature. And then from the modes, then you've got everything is going to manifest. Yeah. All the like what is described here.
Excuse me, Prabhu, there might be people waiting to join.
Oh, thank you, Mother. No one's out. I can't see anything.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But, yeah. That's as far as I can explain on that. I have to reread it again, that section, Mahat Tattva. So you're asking a question between Mahat Tattva and pradhan.
Yeah, difference.
As far as I can remember, Mahat Tattva is the manifestation of which the pradhan is included within.
Yes, I think that's sorry. I thought you said something of a Bhuta, which was like the material
Mahatattva.
elements, but no, Mahatattva manifests. The Pradhan comes from the Mahatattva. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Hare Krishna. All right.
So can I just ask, like when you leave the body, so what is it that goes with you then? Is it the subtle body, mind, ego, and intelligence?
Yeah. That's correct. If one is not at the pure, if we haven't been completely spiritualized, the mind is not completely spiritualized, and we haven't fully developed the spiritual body, then that subtle body will take us to the next gross body.
And so desire, where does that sit with the subtle body? The desires that we have.
The desires,
like the hatred, happiness, and
the desires are embedded.
Uh-huh.
They're embedded in a subtle body. And so in other words, desire is not part of the gross body, obviously. Desire is not in the toes or in the hands.
Yeah.
The bone.
So it's the mind. So it's the mind.
The psyche. It's in the intelligence.
Okay.
So it becomes very much kind of concentrated. Someone desires to act fruitively throughout the whole life, and it's quite a concentrated desire which they've meditated upon. Yeah. So then the next life, those inclinations and those desires will manifest again. So we hopefully want to be free of that.
And that's, I suppose, the same for distress. If somebody has been in distress most of their life, is that something that they would kind of like carry on into the next life?
That's called material. That's called the material world. Next life, you pick up from where you left off, and you're going to continue on your so-called effort to find ultimate happiness. And you're going to meet different, sometimes happy, sometimes meet many distressful situations.
It's
a good point you're bringing out, because don't forget that we don't want to become void.
No.
So we have to change our desire.
Right.
So we change it from material to spiritual, where we desire ultimately to render loving devotion service to Krishna. Yeah, not desires centered upon our own temporary
material desires.
Yeah. Desires linked to matter, desires linked to this material body and this material world. An interesting here in the purple, let's highlight this. Tamasa buddhi. Yeah, so intelligence and ignorance. So that's manifest from the false ego. So misidentification.
Right, yes.
The field. So Prabhupada says here, the field is non-permanent. Here, he said it's non-permanent thing. And we are the knower. But we're in tamasa buddhi. So because of false ego, we identify with all these things.
We are this body, and
Yeah. So what's interesting is that just by hearing this, we might have mentioned this before, just by hearing this level of detail, even unknowingly, it's going to give you a sense of detachment. Because that's the result of knowledge.
Yes.
Transcendental knowledge. It gives you a sense of release, because you get to see it from an objective perspective.
Because you start to dwell on it, and you start to think deeply that, what is this meaning? Where is this going? You're kind of questioning. Yeah, you're questioning.
Yeah, that's correct. It kind of takes you out and you look down on the situation. So now you can look at yourself, you understand, I've got 5 sense objects, I've got desires, and sometimes there's attachment, there's aversion, dvesha, hatred, and from that comes happiness and distress. That's the whole thing, the aggregate, everything. So you get to view
So,
it from another
yeah.
perspective.
At the time of death, they asked, don't they? Have you got any desires?
Huh.
And I think I read somewhere that Prabhupada said no desires now.
It said, have you got, is there anything you like to desire at your last point of death?
Yeah. Yes. Material, obviously materially minded would be thinking about, I suppose, their family, or, please do this, or please look after her or him, but obviously devotees say no desires now, want to go home.
Yeah, it's good you brought that up. I mean, that was my mother's concern, was for me, her son, when she dies.
Right.
She wasn't thinking of Krishna so much. I guess I'm a devotee, so I guess that might have helped her. So that's why we should have. I mean, you've all got families. You've all got different families, and so you all naturally there's attachment there. You want is that when we're leaving the body, we should know actually it's Krishna who's taking care of everyone. There's nothing for me to be worried about. The universe and Krishna is going to take care of my grandchildren.
Yeah. No, I was just kind of thinking out loud when my father passed away.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't exactly there, but I was asking my brother, what was his, how did he, what was his last, did he say anything? But no, my mum kept on saying to him, say Ram, Hare Krishna, say Ram. But I don't think he did. My mom said he was trying, but I think he was just obviously at that point of time you're wrapped up in, what's going on. But the funny thing is, he kind of kept on saying that he sees things on the wall. He kept on saying, it was quite scary. My mom said he kept on saying he saw black spiders and things like that, nearing his death time. And I was
there's
thinking,
all types of things that go on within the mind as well at that stage.
yeah.
But interesting to hear you describe that because what was I going to say? Yeah.
And he didn't have no strength.
Yeah.
He
Well, the
was so
point is,
weak.
yeah,
But
the
he
point.
kind of got up. And my brother said that he kind of like, sat up on the bed. And my brother said, I don't know where he got the energy from. She goes, because he was so weak. He had so many issues going on. But at that last point in his life, he actually got up, from his bed. He kind of sat up. And then obviously he kind of lied down again. But my brother said, where he got that energy from, it was quite amazing.
But the point I want to point out here is that that's why it's good for us to be Krishna conscious throughout our lifetime. Then we
Yeah.
will naturally be able to chant Ram, we will have to chant Krishna. So here's an example of someone who didn't dedicate his life to a specific sadhana,
Yeah.
chant japa properly, though he was pious and he was God, probably believed in God.
Yes, yes.
Because of a lifetime of forgetfulness, actually, of no worship of God, when it comes to that last point, he couldn't,
Yeah.
heard Prabhupada would say this chant, 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 can't, can't.
Yeah.
So he can't. So it doesn't. So that's why it's very important. And I mean, that's why we're practicing spiritual life as a life. So at that point, it will be natural for us because we've been chanting Krishna's holy name and taking shelter of him throughout that life. So at that point, we can take shelter of Krishna. So, excuse me. Oh. Yes, good example that you gave. Here's your relative who's a pious person, but couldn't chant the name of Ram
Yes.
because there's no attachment, no devotion. He was otherwise distracted.
Distracted. Yes, yes.
Because you can, guess what? You can just imagine because it doesn't mean anything to him. It's not important.
Yeah, at that point in time, it was
because there's no attachment and there's no devotion. It's like saying, can you say black elephants or it doesn't. There's no sense of
it doesn't register. It doesn't register.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So let's get a sense of detachment. But I understand this point I mentioned as well is that That's why it's good, because that's what I saw my mother. I thought, obviously she doesn't have the same faith I do, and I was trying to convince her, look, mother, I've been living in temples for so many years, and I haven't gone without a meal, and it's in the rest of my life I'm going to be dedicated to the same thing, So you've no need to worry. Of course, she was worrying. She's a mother, but as devotees, as your mothers, your grandmothers, and things like that, then it's good to it's good at that last stage is that we just put we have to hand it over to the universe, hand it over to the Lord to take care of all sins, etc. Something in the chat here. This verse explains Pradhan. Okay, let's have a look. Let's go there. Oh, now you can't see anything. Can you still see Bhagavad Gita?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Okay, so I've got it. And so, okay, here's the verse that Labang Latika's found. This is third canto. There you go, Lord Kapila, chapter 26, text 10. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the unmanifest eternal combination of the three modes is the cause of the manifest state, and it's called Pradhan. All right, we got that right. And it's called Prakriti when in the manifest stage of existence. Now so we're on the right line now, just trying to see if there's anything on Maha. Okay. Shall I share this screen with? Yeah, let me share this with you. I'm just reading it to myself. I'm being greedy. Let me share.
No, we can hear you. So yeah,
I can hear it. That's enough. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Save me share. Okay.
Thanks.
Let me get. Okay. Proper speaking about the impersonalist conception. Let's pick it up from here. One may argue that the Mahatattva is also different from Pradhan, because in Mahatattva there are manifestations. The actual explanation of Pradhan, however, is given here. When the cause and effect are not clearly manifest, avyakta, the reactions of the total elements does not take place, and that stage of material nature is called Pradhan. Pradhan is not the time element, because in time element there are action, and I'm looking for Mahatattva. You mentioned the Mahatattva, so I think we're on the right track.
Yeah, I put another verse that explains the Mahatattva.
Okay, let me find it. Let me go there. Let me chat. Okay. It's just loading up. Loaded device taking a long time to load up. Do you have it there, Mother Lavanga? You can read it because it's.
Yeah, it says the translation is thereafter, influenced by the interactions of eternal time, the supreme sum total of matter called the Mahatattva became manifested. And in this Mahatattva, the unalloyed goodness, the Supreme Lord, sowed the seeds of universal manifestation out of his own body.
Yeah, I've got it here now. The Mahatattva is directly connected with the supreme consciousness of the Supreme Being.
Yes.
Still it appears as matter. The Mahatattva, a shadow of pure consciousness, is the germinating place of all creation. It is pure goodness with a slight addition of the material mode of passion, and therefore activity generated from this point. Okay, so I think we were kind of correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Mahatattva is more the conscious element of material nature.
Yes, supreme consciousness of the Supreme Being, but it still appears as matter.
Yes.
Yeah, as I said, you need a pen and paper and to take notes to try and understand this whole.
It's very complex, yeah.
All right, let me share again Bhagavad Gita. Oh, there it is, Bhagavad Gita. All right, okay. Now, yeah, so the next verses 8 to 12. These are very. I learned these verses at some point and then forgot them as well, so I need to go over them again. Do you know these verses, Mother Rajkishore? Amam bitvam, adam bitvam.
I can read them, all of them, but when it comes to getting from the memory, a few come in and few just
Yeah, so
misplaced.
you obviously, at one time, you memorized them.
I did, but it's all gone.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd be surprised when you do that. You go over a few times and it comes back. But what's going to be described now? Well, let's just go there. Here it is. This is now this is knowledge as opposed to ignorance. This is what's going to be described here. What actually constitutes knowledge. And so perhaps I can read this. Well, we made a few notes last time, I think. Okay, so just to save time, I'll just read through the translation, if that's okay. Or actually, I will read the Sanskrit because I learnt these verses and it might be good. Amam vidvam adam vidvam ahimsam shanti ajavam acharyo pashanam shocham stairamatma vinigraha indriyateshu vairagyam manarahankara evacha. In this part you've heard janma mityu vyadi tokotoshuno darshanam Shakti anabhishvangha puttradhara grihadishu nityam cha shama chitvam ishtano papapatishu mayi chananya yogena bhakti avyapicharini viviktadesha sevitvam arati janma shamsati ajatma jnanani yatvam tattvaganata darshanam etat jnanamiti proktam Ganam yatchito nata. Okay. So humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification. No, sorry, I was looking to. Yeah. Absence of false ego, perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, janma mrityu, diya, vyadi, dukkha, dosham, darshanam. Detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest. Even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events. Constant and unalloyed devotion to me. That's avyapicharini. Yeah. Aspiring to live in a solitary place. Detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge. And besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So everything else is ignorance. Okay. So it's quite a lengthy purport. Prabhupada explains each one of these. One of the more lengthy purports in his Bhagavad Gita. Any questions from the verse to begin with? Okay. So the process of knowledge is sometimes, so the process which just been described, is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. So it's a misconception of what's being described. Yeah. But actually, this is the real process of knowledge. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of the 24 elements as described in text 5 or text 6. Yeah. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of those elements. Okay, so take note of that. Anyone want out? Well, then this is how to get out. Anyone want out of here? This is the means to get out. The means to get out of the entanglement of those elements. The embodied soul is entrapped by the body, which is a casing made of the 24 elements. And the process of knowledge is described here is a means to get out of it. Yeah, so through knowledge, we can get out, through transcendental knowledge. Of all the descriptions of the process of knowledge, the most important point is described in the first line of the 11th verse. Mayi chananya yogena bhakti avyapicharini. So bhakti, yeah, avyapicharini. The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. Yeah. That's the whole purpose. That's to bring us to this point. So if one does not approach or is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items of no particular value. Okay. So in essence, you might find materialistic person might be non-violent, might lead a simple life, might be tolerant, maybe self-controlled, etc. May live in a solitary place, may be detached from the general mass of people. But unless they have this constant and unalloyed devotion to me, it is of no value, ultimately. Yeah. Shama eva hi kevalam, as Srimad Bhagavatam describes. Yeah. So that's being mentioned. Oh, now I'm stuck on this page. Okay, there we go. Any questions as we go, please feel free to ask. So we've got that. If one does not approach, then the other 19 items of no particular value. But if one takes to devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, the other 19 items automatically develop within him. Okay, so then Prabhupada quotes Yashasti Bhakti Bhagavati Kinchanai Shivesh Gunastattva Samsate Sura. So this is from 5th canto. It's often quoted verse from Prabhupada, but just so these 9 items will develop if one is practicing bhakti avyapicharini, unalloyed devotional service. Okay. The principle of accepting a spiritual master, as mentioned in the 8th verse, is essential. Even for one who takes the devotional service, it is most important. Yeah, we're studying that in Nectar of Devotion. Guru Pad Ashraya. We're all familiar with this principle, isn't it? Guru Pad Ashraya, taking shelter of the spirit. So, okay, so unalloyed devotional service is the means to get out. And by that, the other 19 items develop. But to render devotional service, you need to accept a teacher, a guide, or a spiritual master. Hare Krishna, Baba Chandravali, welcome. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, sorry.
No problem. We're getting pretty technical here. Even for one who takes the devotional service is most important. Transcendental life begins when one accepts a bona fide spiritual master. Okay, so it begins in earnest. In that sense, like you make a commitment, like you sign on a dotted paper. You sign yourself over to the guru. Before that, you're just preparing. You're just tilling the field before the actual real seed may actually manifest. Yeah. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, clearly states here that this process of knowledge is the actual path. Anything speculated beyond this is nonsense. Okay, so this is a path to become Krishna conscious. So it's quite interesting. You can look at it in this light, and we can, okay, you want to be Krishna conscious? Okay, well, here's what you have to meditate upon and develop. Yeah. And then Prabhupada's giving more details in the purple that the beginning principle is accept the spiritual master. Right, so now he's going to analyze each one of these that he's mentioned. Any questions before we continue? Okay, aman vidvam madam vidvam. So interesting, very interesting, this point. And knowledge is actually, knowledge actually means, or what I'm trying to say, Humility is a sign of knowledge. If someone has knowledge, but is proud of that knowledge, that's not actually realized knowledge. Who's an example in Srimad Bhagavatam was someone who was very knowledgeable, but not very humble. And he was killed because of that sin of proclaiming to be knowledgeable.
Is that the one Balaram killed with a grass?
Yeah, that's it.
Romaharshan?
Lomaharshana.
That's it, yeah. So that's, yeah, he was, Krishna has come to establish religious principles, and also Balaram as well. They're the absolute truth. So this was hypocritical. Hypocritical. Here's someone who's professing to know Veda and Purana, but they're full of pride. He didn't offer respects to Balaram. Yeah. So it's quite a description of that type of, I can't remember the details now, but it's like, just like an actor, someone's acting as a learned person, but they're not actually a learned person. Or someone's acting like on a play, someone's just an actor, but they're not actually the character. They're just acting. So in the same way, someone who is very proud, if they're possessing to be self-realized or to have great knowledge, they're just acting, you know. So humility described here. So it's the first two items mentioned. So here it is. As for knowledge outlined here, the items may be analyzed as follows. Humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. Some people are very anxious to be honored. Very anxious to be honored. Yeah, we should not be anxious to be honored. We could try being anxious to be dishonest, to be dishonored. And easier said than done. All right. So the material conception of life makes us very eager to receive honor from others. Yes. But from the point of view, who is another person in Srimad Bhagavatam who wasn't honored? And I get it right. He wasn't. No, he was concerned because someone, he wasn't honored by Lord Shiva. He wasn't honored by Lord Shiva.
Daksha,
yeah. Daksha Yagna. He became infuriated that Shiva didn't stand up or pay obeisances when he walked into the assembly. Yeah. And we know the whole pastime that then unfolded. Yeah. So
we also have an example in CC, don't we? That Dick Vijay, what's his name?
Yeah,
Mahaprabhu.
Yeah, Dick Vijay Pandit.
Dick Vijay Pandit.
Yeah. Yes. Keshava Kashmiri.
Keshava Kashmiri, yeah.
Keshava Kashmiri. Yeah. And it's a wonderful, wonderful pastime how Lord Chaitanya humbled him in such a wonderful way, actually. In a sense that he had hundreds of followers. He was acclaimed by hundreds, if not thousands. But Lord Chaitanya specifically defeated him in a secluded place away from his followers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He had come to the Ganges just to take his bath. And he wasn't accompanied by the elephants and the trumpets and the retinue. Yeah, he was there just taking bath, I think on his own, perhaps with one or two people. And it's there that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeated him and brought him down to his knees, but not in public. That's Lord Chaitanya's special compassion upon him. Yeah, but there's an example, Keshava Kashmiri. Can you imagine that? Going to different temples and going there to defeat everyone else. Imagine the audacity of that, traveling to but that's what they used to do. It used to be kind of sport in those days, They just go to, imagine, if someone's giving class specifically just to defeat all the other devotees in that temple. That's not, it doesn't gel right with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But it's a bit different in those days. Things are a little bit cultured. A lot of emphasis was put on Vedantic knowledge, and so they would, challenge each other according to their learning. It's a bit more culturally, it's a bit more of a cultural thing. But just that point of going to different places and sending a messenger in front. I will argue with your greatest scholar. You just bring him to me. Asking for trouble. All right. Okay. Who knows he's not this body? Anything honor or dishonor pertaining to this body is useless. One should not be hankering after this material deception. So, okay, honor or dishonor is useless. So has anyone been dishonored out there? Yeah. And you
every day.
Every day. Oh,
Humbled.
Yeah, the material world is a very humbling place. So
mine at the moment is I'm not a good mother.
Okay, there you go. So you're being dishonored. So Papa's saying it's all useless.
Oh, I get that all the time.
There you go. Yeah, but it's all in relation to the body. It's in relation to the temporary body. So from an absolute perspective, it is Prabhupada's saying here is if we know we're not the body, that's like Prabhupada, back to Tirtha Maharaj went to Prabhupada and he complained. He said, Srila Prabhupada, there is racism in this movement. Because he obviously experienced it, because he was in a black body, and so he obviously experienced it, because devotees, they joined and they're still probably acting according to their conditioned nature. So he experienced it, gross or subtle, this racism. So Prabhupada said, well, if you think you're a black man, then it's going to be a problem for you. You got it? If you think you're a black man, so that's what's being said here. Yeah. Makes us, who knows, in anything honor or dishonor pertaining to the body is useless. One should not be hankering after this material deception. So it's a material deception. Sorry, I keep stopping. I keep getting lost. People are very anxious to be famous for their religion, even. Okay, so they can be religious. They want to be famous for it. And consequently, it is found that without understanding the principles of religion, one enters into some group which is not actually following religious principles and then wants to advertise himself as a religious mentor. Now, Prabhupada is speaking about something very specific that he experienced in his life and saw here. And I cannot say exactly what that is, but he probably has someone specifically in mind, is my speculation here, that without understanding real religion, one joins a religious group, which is not actually following real religion, and then wants to advertise himself as a religious mentor. As for actual advancement in spiritual science, one should have a test to see how far he is progressing. He can judge by these items, so by those things. Manvitvam, Adambitvam. So, any questions, comments? Please feel free to ask.
But we've heard that we should be proud of being Krishna conscious, a devotee in Krishna conscious. I heard that only recently as well again.
Yeah, but it's not the pride as exemplified by a materialistic person. It's a sense of being happy, of feeling oneself sheltered, or being happy to represent such an illustrious parampara.
Right.
To be part of such an so we should identify as being, we should be grateful for that. We should be grateful, but not in the sense that we should be, well, we see ourselves as being the greatest compared to all the other religions and things like that, and we come across as being very high and mighty.
Right. Yes.
No, we just have a sense of being very grateful and very honored to be representing this illustrious parampara coming from Krishna himself. It's like Prabhupada. He would even walk, so he will walk with his head held high, so to speak. But not as a proud materialistic person, but as someone who's in knowledge.
Right. Yeah.
Not in arrogance.
Yeah, not arrogant. Yeah, that's the word. Yeah. Not,
so, like,
yeah.
put the tilak on and things like that. We are devotees, like that.
Yeah. Raj Kishore mentioned a good word. Not being arrogant.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Man bit bama dam bit bama himsa. Himsa. We all know this word. Ahimsa milk. Ahimsa. Ahimsa ghee. Ahimsa yoga. Non-violence is generally taken, okay, this is an interesting point, is generally taken to mean not killing or destroying the body. But Prabhupada takes it further. But actually, non-violence means not to put others into distress, okay? Subtly or grossly. People in general are trapped by ignorance in the material concept of life, and they perpetually suffer material pains. So unless one elevates people to spiritual knowledge, one is practicing violence. Okay, that's a great one for the book distributors. A lot to go on here. Unless one elevates people to spiritual knowledge, one is practicing violence. So, yeah, so we're part of the movement that is propagating spiritual knowledge, which is good. Yeah. One should try his best to distribute real knowledge to the people so that they may become enlightened and leave this material entanglement. That is non-violence. Okay, so here's Prabhupada's very unique. This is his, could say, his mood and mission. Yeah, Prabhupada, it comes out here in this paragraph very much. Takes it to a whole nother level. Yeah, not to preach, not to tell someone about Krishna as being violent. Okay. The next time you're in Tesco's, you should tap the back of the person in front of you at the till and tell them about Krishna. Otherwise, you're being violent. Oh, yeah. Next time, when you go for a walk tomorrow, the first person you see walking a dog, stop him and tell him you're a servant of Krishna. Otherwise, if you don't, then you're being violent. I mean, I can't profess to be on such a platform. I don't do that type of thing. But there you go.
He's servant of his dog. You should see in the park.
Oh yes, browsing it. They pick up anyway.
Yeah, sorts of things.
Like servant. Instead of dog, they're worshiping God. They're worshiping dog. Yeah. All right. So that's non-violence. So now you know. If someone asks you what's Prabhupada's definition of non-violence, then you can say, here it is. Yeah. So tolerance. So again, these are all. If we want to be Krishna conscious, this is how we can be Krishna conscious. Yeah. Tolerance means that one should be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. Okay, it comes up again. Dishonor. Yeah, tolerance means one should be practiced to bear insult. And we get plenty of practice in this material world, I think.
Especially in book distribution.
Yeah.
Or even Harinam.
Yeah, book distribution. Yeah, they get good practice of that. Amazing practice. It's quite humbling when you go to approach someone and they don't even acknowledge you exist. And you get hundreds of people do that to you all day. They don't even acknowledge you exist when you approach. Some do, but some will not. It's very good for the false ego. It's very good. Tolerance means that or preaching in general as well. Tolerance means that one should be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. So I'm getting distracted. One film I watched about Francis of Assisi, and he's going preaching, and it's raining, and they're walking in the mud, and they go to this big villa, and they're knocking on the door to spread the good word of the Lord. And then this man opens the door and he yells so much abuse at them, and he kind of violently just throws them into the big thick mud and the rain, and it's raining and it's muddy, and they're thrown with their tunics all covered in mud, and the guy slams the door, and Francis of Assisi is in ecstasy. He's going, yes, this is this is what we should be anxious for. This is the mercy of the Lord. This is the mercy of the Lord. He's in ecstasy because in the name of, he's sacrificing, going through so much suffering, but it's all in the name of the Lord. So he's very happy about it. So he's quite practiced. Yeah, practice to bear insult and dishonor from others. And here it is. If one is engaged in the advancement of spiritual knowledge, there will be so many insults and much dishonor from others. No. This is expected because material nature is so constituted. And we just said Nishinga Tadasi, Prabhupada mentions, even a boy like Prahlad, who only 5 years old was engaged in the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, was endangered when his father became antagonistic to his devotion. The father tried to kill him in so many ways, but Prahlad tolerated him. So there may be many impediments for making advancement in spiritual knowledge, but we should be tolerant and continue our progress without determination. Okay? Prabhupada was on a plane one time. This was way back in, obviously, the early 60s, in the 60s, when people were still smoking on planes, believe it or not. Do you remember that time, anyone? When people would smoke on trains and buses and...
Yeah, yes. Horrible.
I can remember as a young kid being taken on a tube by my mum, me and my sister. Oh my God, the stink of tobacco and smoking was just overwhelming, especially for being so young. And the floor was set in grooves where the fag ends would fall into. It was such disgusting. Yeah. Why am I speaking about that? How did we get there?
And now you keep smelling drugs everywhere.
Yeah. Why am I speaking about that? Smoking.
You're talking about tolerance.
Tolerance.
Having to tolerate the smoke and all that in those days.
Yeah.
You even know.
Was that the point?
We didn't even know that we were tolerating all the smoke and everything in the bus and tubes.
Never know. Yeah.
But we were.
It was part of living, wasn't it?
Yeah. So there may be many impediments to making it. Oh, that was it. I was telling the story of Prabhupada. Yeah. Prabhupada, so this was on a plane, and someone started smoking near Prabhupada. So Prabhupada's servant, who was with him, devotee, obviously, he complained to the stewardess, and he made a complaint about it for the sake of Prabhupada. And then so the stewardess dealt with it, and then he started smoking, and then someone else or the same person, 10 minutes later, they started smoking again. And again, the disciple got quite agitated and he was going to do something about it. Prabhupada said, no. I said, otherwise, he said, we just tolerate. Otherwise, we're just the same as them. Let us just tolerate. Otherwise, we are non-different from them. Prabhupada said in that particular situation. So Prabhupada sat there while persons were smoking, you know. Let's just tolerate, you know, rather than, you know. Anyway, Prabhupada tolerates so much as we know, for spreading Krishna consciousness. Yeah. All right. It's 3 minutes
Should
past
there
7.
be
Any last points? Yeah.
should there be a limit of how much you can tolerate, or
No,
no? Okay.
no,
Or
no limit.
then would you be like a doormat
Yep.
who will just throw things at
Yep.
you?
Chunada piece and
Okay.
Nitrina,
Okay.
Toro the piece,
I know the answer. I just want to.
Manina, Manina, Kitana, Stada, Hari.
hurry.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no limit to tolerance. Be a doormat. Let everyone tread on you. Be a blade of grass.
Mm-hmm.
And if you,
Reading it is different, really, and you think, oh yes, I can tolerate. When it comes to real tolerating, like my Prabhu going like that,
yeah,
that was when I realized the meaning of the word tolerance.
yeah. That's why actually family life is good for learning tolerance.
Yes.
Family members, etc. But life in general. Yeah, I mean, if it's too much for the false ego, then you better do something about it. You better move out the way. So, all right, tolerate, 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 tolerate. Now, there's some things we don't tolerate. That's when the Vaishnava is being insulted.
No, I was just going to
Spiritual
mention.
master is being insulted, when the Vaishnava is being derided. No, that we don't tolerate. We should become like fire. Just like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when Jagan Madai attacked Nityananda. So that we don't tolerate. Right, is anything to herself? And if you want to read the extreme of this, it's the Avanti Brahmana in the
Oh yeah.
11th canto. My God. People were passing urine in his food and everything. Such a description. He was saying he was tolerating it all. He wasn't revengeful, he wasn't blaming anyone. This is all the Lord's doing, it's all my karma.
Canto 11.
Canto 11, the Avanti Brahmana.
Yeah, that'd be.
Yeah, it's a good part to read. It's quite an amazing story. Of course, now so it's not so easy as we know. But yeah, we should try and be tolerant. There should be no limit to our tolerance. And if we're not identifying with this body, then there will be. But to that degree, we identify with our body and a false conception of who we think we are, then it'd be difficult. And then we always be in ecstasy when we chant the holy name, as you know. Trinada pi sunichana, Ora pi hishna, amanina, manidina, kitana sadahari.
In the early days, when we used to go Harinam, like a lot of people say, go and get a job, what are you doing, wasting time, and go and get a job. used to get insulted like that when you used to go on Harinam. Not now, I'm talking about quite a few years ago. So is that tolerance when you just ignore them?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're singing the holy name of the Lord. And there's so many things that come. Even who is it describing the other day? Is it Indra Dhumaraj was explaining how they would go on Harinam and people would take slabs of meat and come over and rub it in their face.
Oh, oh, oh dear.
I was on a Harinam and one homeless person came over to the Harinam and punched really hard my godbrother Abhimanyu square in the face,
Oh.
Punched him really hard, this drunk person,
You just tolerate that, or it just
Yeah, or that if you're that type of situation, if you react back, you might get worse. Better tolerate, better just move on. Of course,
it's really hard though, isn't it? It's because your immediate reaction would be, like push him away or something.
well, Well, that should be the reaction. I mean, that was the reaction of the other devotees who saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't tolerate it, but Abhimanyu himself, he just tolerated it.
Was that at the Rath Yatra, one of the Rath Yatras?
No, this was Harina. This wasn't the Rath Yatra. This was
Even at Rath Yatra, he got.
Saturday's night Harina.
Mm.
So yeah, this material world is an intolerable place, so we should learn to tolerate. I think I often mention this quote from Yudhisthira Maharaj that if it wasn't for tolerance, then the world would be destroyed within a day.
Wow. That's strong.
Yeah. If no one tolerated anything, it wouldn't be civilization would cease to exist.
I think you have a kind of mentality. Is it worth arguing with these people because they have no understanding or maybe intelligence, so they're just kind of ranting on, and you're in a better place in the sense that you have knowledge, so you kind of just say carry on, but it doesn't affect me, and you kind of walk away.
Yeah, that's a general principle. Yeah, that's the general principle. Yeah, that we should use. Otherwise, if we can easily get entangled in the material energy, if we try and right everything which is supposedly wrong done to us, then we'll be very frustrated people. And just tolerate.
That's the hardest one to do. Yeah.
And Prabhupada gives example of Prahlad.
Yeah.
Prahlad.
And you're only 5.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm preaching to myself here.
Yeah.
I don't profess to be on such a platform, but yeah, we have to tolerate everything. There's more things to tolerate coming down the line.
Yeah.
There's more things coming. So take shelter of Krishna, and Krishna will. If we take shelter of Krishna, then we will be able to tolerate. Identify with Krishna, identify ourselves as Krishna's servant, then we can easily tolerate. All right. So you got some homework for this week, is to be tolerant, and you can report back next week.
What incidences of being tolerant?
Yeah. If you can report back if you strangled anyone last week. No, you can try it. So practice. Take your tolerance a level deeper.
But can I just ask a question?
Yeah,
Nitai Mata put something on that chat thing about the Nishingadev, the grains not offered on Nishinga Chaturdasi, and even I was quite surprised reading that you shouldn't. It should have been like Ekadashi. No